Regarded as an icon of the 1970s slasher flick era, The Town That Dreaded Sundown horrified audiences with its claim of being based on a true story. More terrifying than fantasy is the real-life case that inspired the movie, that of the Texarkana Moonlight Murders and the Phantom of Texarkana, a masked killer that horrified the nation long before the Zodiac Killer claimed his first victim. On today's episode, we will explore the beloved horror cult classic film, along with the real case that still haunts the world like a ghost haunts in the night. Join us as we delve into the case of the Phantom, a case that remains unsolved to this day. In the 1970s, horror fans were captivated by the rise of a new brand of cinematic terror. Slasher flicks, such as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween, quickly earned a cult following and became a staple subgenre of horror movies. Unlike the previous examples, which drew some inspiration from real-life cases but were largely works of fantasy, The Town That Dreaded Sundown claimed to be based on a true story. The real-life story of the Phantom of Texarkana was far more terrifying than fiction. Today, we will explore both the 1976 film and the horrifying real-world case behind it.
Samuel P. Fuller, age 24. Linda Mae Jenkins, age 19. Brutally attacked March 3rd, 1946. Howard W. Turner, 29. Emma Lou Cook, 17. Bodies discovered in a wooded area on March 24th. Roy Allen, 17. Peggy Loomis, 15. Both found dead April 14th in Spring Lake Park. Floyd Reed, age 34. Murdered in his home on May 3rd. Mrs. Reed shot twice, but survived. This man's identity is unknown. He was believed to be between 30 and 40 years old. He wore a white hood and was known only as the Phantom Killer.
The Town That Dreaded Sundown grips audiences with fear from the very beginning, opening with a documentary-style narration that blurs the line between fiction and reality. The film is set in post-World War II Texarkana, a rural area comprised of portions of Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. The movie wastes no time in introducing the villain of the story, a terrifying, ruthless, and seemingly invincible masked killer known as the Phantom. This horrifying killer stalks his victims, targeting young couples parked in secluded areas late at night, then ambushes them in a brutal display of extreme violence. The movie does not shy away from depicting the cruelty and savagery of the Phantom's kills. Law enforcement scrambles for answers as the Phantom's reign of terror escalates and puts locals on edge. Horror buffs will certainly recall the most iconic and infamous murder scene from the movie, one in which the Phantom attaches a knife to the end of a trombone slide and repeatedly stabs his victim by playing the instrument. Law enforcement, led by Texas Ranger J.D. Morales, explore a theory that the Phantom only strikes every 21 days. Desperate for any leads, they consult with a psychiatrist to construct a psychological profile of the elusive killer. True to the suspenseful tone of the film, as the officers discuss the possibilities with the psychiatrist, the camera pans to reveal the shoes of the Phantom. He is sitting in the very same diner, eavesdropping on the conversation. The eerie and suspenseful tone is amplified by the final scenes of the movie. There is no true plot resolution, as the Phantom is never caught, and just as quickly as he appeared, he vanishes once more. In the final scenes, time skips to present day. A theater is shown, displaying the premiere of The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Eager moviegoers are lined up outside the cinema, and as the camera pans through the queue, it slowly comes to a stop on a pair of shoes. The very same shoes seen in the diner. The screen fades to black, and audiences are left with a sickening feeling that the phantom might be sitting among them even now. Unfortunately, the film's claim of being based on a true story is indeed true. In early 1946, Texarkana was terrorized by a mysterious masked murderer. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders, as they came to be known, were perpetuated by an unknown killer the media dubbed the Phantom of Texarkana. This real-life phantom stalked couples parked on lovers' lanes and ambushed them late at night. This behavior was later exhibited by one of America's most infamous killers, the Zodiac Killer. The first attack of the Phantom of Texarkana occurred on February 22, 1946. 25-year-old Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend, 19-year-old Mary Jeanne Larry, were attacked while parked on a dark back road at around midnight. The couple was forced out of their car at gunpoint and beaten brutally by a masked assailant. Mary was ordered to run, while Jimmy was beaten until he'd suffered a severe skull fracture. The man caught up to Mary, beat her savagely, then sexually assaulted her using the barrel of his gun. Remarkably, Jimmy and Mary found the resilience to fight for their lives. Mary ran half a mile to the nearest house and called police, while Jimmy flagged down a passing car. Both survived and were able to provide their account to police, but this was initially considered an isolated incident. The Phantom struck again on March 24th, and this time he left no survivors. Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were found the next day by a passing driver. They had both been shot multiple times, including a single gunshot wound to the back of the head, execution style. Blood pooled on the ground outside the car indicated they had been killed outside the vehicle and staged back inside the car post-mortem. A few weeks later, on April 14th, the Phantom attacked Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker. Though they were also killed with a gun, the brutality of these shots was far more severe. Both victims suffered gunshot wounds in incredibly cruel locations, including through the neck, nose, and face. Paul and Betty were only 16 and 15 years old, but the level of overkill suggested a horrifying amount of rage. Members of the local community were now beyond terrified. The final attack attributed to the Phantom happened on May 3rd, and this attack showed a sharp departure in the typical MO. Virgil and Katie Starks, aged 37 and 36, were attacked in their home. None can be certain as to why the Phantom departed from his usual ways, but presumably his victim pool had run dry. Young couples, terrified of being attacked, were no longer staying out late or parking in secluded areas. Just before 9 p.m., Virgil was sitting in an armchair in the living room, browsing through the paper. First came the sound of glass shattering from the window nearest the chair, then the crack of the gunshot as the bullet struck Virgil at close range. Katie ran from the back of the house as Virgil tried to stand, but he quickly collapsed into the chair, already dead. Katie raced to the phone and attempted to call the police. Before she could, she was shot twice from the same window. Katie had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the face, but remarkably, she remained alive, conscious, and clear-headed. She attempted to retrieve her gun, but the blood pouring into her eyes made it impossible to see. She heard a noise at the back of the house and immediately knew the killer was closing in. Acting quickly, Katie ran out the front door and to her sister's house next door. Her sister and brother-in-law were not home, so Katie ran to the next nearest neighbor. Running into the house, Katie stated, "Virgil's dead," and collapsed to the floor. The neighbor grabbed a rifle and shot into the air, both to ward off anyone pursuing Katie and to alert the neighbors. Another neighbor came, and together they brought Katie to the nearest hospital. Katie survived, but by the time police arrived, the phantom had disappeared as a ghost in the night. Despite persistent efforts from police, a massive manhunt, widespread media attention, and the promise of a substantial reward, the Phantom of Texarkana was never officially identified or apprehended. So, although The Town That Dreaded Sundown is based on a true story, how accurately did the film depict the real-life events? The opening of the movie claims that only the names have been changed, but this is not the case. The film took several creative liberties, which included compression of the timeline and sensationalism of the crimes. The actual Phantom of Texarkana never killed anyone by playing a knife-equipped trombone. At the same time, the movie also diminished some of the actual brutality. For instance, the horrific sexual assault of the first female victim was never depicted or discussed. The Town That Dreaded Sundown fell into a common pitfall of films that follow the story of real-world serial killers. The Phantom was depicted as superhuman, bordering on supernatural, and was established as an unstoppable force of pure evil. This movie, like many others in the genre, focused heavily on the perpetrator and gave less attention than is due to his victims. The film also failed to accurately capture the true terror of the locals, whom, in real life, suffered an unspeakable community-wide trauma. In the actual case, locals organized numerous manhunts, and brave teenagers camped out on dark backroads armed with rifles, hoping to spare friends and classmates from suffering at the hands of the Phantom. Friends and families of the Phantom's victims were disappointed by the movie, with Polly Ann Moore's brother pursuing legal action against the film's director for a depiction of his sister he felt was inaccurate and damaging. Though the movie was based primarily on actual events, there were heavy creative liberties taken, sensationalism of actions, and important details omitted. The Town That Dreaded Sundown stands as a popular example of the 1970s slasher craze, but also serves as a reminder of the often controversial connection between horror films and reality. While sensationalizing stories and taking creative liberties can make for a more entertaining movie-going experience, it can also hurt those who have already suffered through tragedy that can't be turned off with the click of a button. For fans of the slasher genre, The Town That Dreaded Sundown remains a beloved piece of cinematic history. For the residents of Texarkana, the story of the Phantom remains a haunting reminder of young lives taken too soon and a monster that was never brought to justice. For us, The Town That Dreaded Sundown and the real-life Texarkana Moonlight Murders that inspired it shall remain as yet another tale from the underworld.
If you enjoyed this true crime story, don't forget to like and subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments. Want to watch another chilling tale from the underworld? Check out these other videos on screen.